The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the busy Nashville street as Daniel Rivers carefully removed his old guitar from its weathered case. The worn leather strap, patched in 3 places, felt familiar against his shoulder. His calloused fingers brushed across the strings, checking the tuning one last time. Beside him, Lily sat cross-legged on their faded blanket, her small hands carefully positioning the cardboard sign she'd decorated with colorful markers. "Help my daddy sing his songs," it read in her neat childish writing, surrounded by hand-drawn musical notes and hearts. "Maybe we should try the other corner tomorrow, sweetheart," Daniel suggested softly, watching the steady stream of tourists flowing past without a glance. The spring breeze carried the sounds of distant music from the honky-tonks, mixing with the chatter of passing crowds. Lily shook her head firmly, her brown pigtails bouncing. "This is our lucky spot, Daddy. I can feel it." Her smile never wavered, though Daniel noticed how she pulled her too small jacket tighter against the cooling air. He began to play, his fingers finding the familiar chords of one of his original songs. The melody rose above the street noise, telling a story of hope and second chances. A few people slowed their pace, but most hurried by, clutching shopping bags and cameras. "Your voice sounds extra good today," Lily encouraged, swaying gently to the music. Her faith in him never seemed to dim, even when his own courage faltered. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering the night he'd written this particular song. It had been 3 years ago, sitting at their small kitchen table after Lily had gone to bed. The bills had been piled high, and his factory job had just been cut. But instead of giving in to despair, he'd picked up his guitar and let the music say what his heart needed to express. 2 tourists paused, an elderly couple holding hands. The woman smiled warmly and dropped a handful of coins into his open guitar case. "Beautiful song," she said kindly before moving on. Lily's face lit up as she counted the coins. "See, Daddy, they loved it. Sing the one about the rainbow next." Daniel nodded, switching to another original composition. This one had a more upbeat tempo, and Lily hummed along, knowing every word by heart. He sang louder, pushing back against the familiar whispers of doubt that always seemed to lurk at the edges of his mind. A small group gathered briefly, and a few more coins clinked into the case. Lily beamed with pride, as if her father had just played at the Grand Ole Opry instead of a crowded street corner. "You're getting better every day," she said earnestly during a break between songs. "Soon everybody's going to want to hear your music." Daniel reached over to squeeze her hand, marveling at her unwavering optimism. "Thanks for believing in me, sweetheart." He started another song, this one slower and more emotional. It was Lily's favorite, written on her 8th birthday when he couldn't afford to buy her the bicycle she wanted. The lyrics spoke of a father's love being worth more than any material gift. The sun was beginning to set, painting the Nashville skyline in shades of orange and purple, when a sharp, familiar voice cut through his music like a knife. "Well, well, still wasting time with this nonsense?" Daniel's fingers stumbled on the strings as Monica approached, her high heels clicking against the sidewalk. She stood there in her expensive business suit, lips curved in a mocking smile. "Mom?" Lily's voice was small and uncertain. "Look at you two," Monica said loudly, drawing the attention of passers-by. "My ex-husband, the wannabe star, dragging our daughter into his pathetic fantasy." Daniel's face burned as people began to stare. He lowered his guitar, trying to keep his voice steady. "Monica, please, not here." "Where else?" she demanded, gesturing dramatically at their setup. "You're out here embarrassing yourself in public, so why shouldn't I point out how ridiculous this is?" Lily scrambled to her feet, her lower lip trembling. "Daddy's not embarrassing anyone. His songs are beautiful." Monica's laugh was sharp and cruel. "Oh, honey, you're too young to understand how the real world works. Your father's been chasing this stupid dream for years, and what does he have to show for it? A beat-up guitar and a sidewalk spot?" Daniel carefully placed his guitar in its case, his hands shaking slightly. The small crowd that had gathered was watching the scene unfold with uncomfortable interest. "You're still the same pathetic dreamer you were when I left," Monica continued, her voice dripping with disdain. "Except now you're dragging our daughter down with you. What kind of example are you setting?" Daniel felt each word like a physical blow, but he forced himself to stand tall. "I'm teaching her to believe in herself," he said quietly, "to follow her heart." "Follow her heart?" Monica scoffed. Into poverty? Into failure? Real responsible parenting there, Daniel. Lily pressed against Daniel's side, her small hand finding his and holding tight. He could feel her trembling, and it broke his heart to know she was witnessing this. "At least I'm here," Daniel said, his voice rough with emotion. "At least I'm trying." "Trying?" Monica's voice rose higher. "Is that what you call this? Sitting on a street corner begging for change? You're nothing but a joke, Daniel Rivers, a sad, deluded joke." The setting sun cast harsh shadows across Monica's face as she delivered her final verbal blow. "Maybe it's time I reconsidered our custody arrangement. Lily deserves better than watching her father make a fool of himself day after day." Daniel stood frozen, his daughter's hand clutched in his, as Monica turned on her heel and strode away. The scattered audience quickly dispersed, leaving father and daughter alone in the growing twilight. Lily's grip on his hand tightened. "Don't listen to her, Daddy," she whispered, though her voice quavered. "She doesn't understand your music. She never did." Daniel looked down at his daughter's trusting face, his heart heavy with a mixture of love and uncertainty. The last rays of sunlight caught the tears in her eyes, making them shine like tiny stars. Daniel's fingers trembled on the guitar strings as Monica's sharp words still hung in the air. She had stormed off, leaving behind a wake of whispers and stares from the evening crowd. He forced himself to take a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. "It's okay, Daddy," Lily whispered, though her bottom lip quivered. "Play another song." He managed a weak smile for her sake and started strumming softly. The melody barely carried over the bustling street noise, the click of boots on pavement, the rumble of passing cars, the chatter of tourists heading to nearby bars. A burst of loud laughter cut through his playing. 3 men stumbled past, clearly having enjoyed too many drinks at the nearby honky-tonks. One of them noticed Daniel and elbowed his friend. "Hey, look, another wannabe star," the tallest one called out, swaying slightly. His friend snickered. Daniel kept his head down, focusing on his guitar, but the men weren't finished. An empty beer bottle sailed through the air, landing with a clatter inches from his guitar case. Lily flinched and scrambled closer to her father. "Get a real job," one of them shouted before they moved on, laughing. Lily's shoulders began to shake. Silent tears rolled down her cheeks as she pressed her face against Daniel's arm. His heart cracked seeing her cry, but he had to stay strong for her. He set his guitar aside and pulled her into a tight hug. "Shh, baby girl, it's all right," he murmured, though his own voice was rough with emotion. "Those men don't matter." "Why are people so mean?" Lily hiccuped against his shirt. Daniel stroked her hair, searching for the right words. Sometimes people forget to be kind, but we won't let them change who we are." He picked up his guitar again, cradling it like an old friend. The song came to him naturally, the one he'd written late one night while watching Lily sleep, his heart so full of love it had spilled over into melody. "This one's for you, sweetheart," he said softly, and began to play. The gentle notes floated up into the evening air as Daniel sang about tiny hands and brave smiles, about bedtime stories and morning hugs. His voice, though trembling at first, grew stronger as he poured his heart into every word. He sang about a father's endless love, about faith that burns bright even in darkness, about the light he saw in his daughter's eyes. A few people slowed their pace. An elderly couple stopped to listen, the woman's hand pressed to her heart. A young mother with a sleeping baby in her stroller paused nearby, swaying gently to the melody. Unknown to Daniel, another figure stood in the shadows of a storefront. Margaret Cole had been heading to her car when the music caught her attention. Now she couldn't move, transfixed by the raw emotion in Daniel's voice. Tears gathered in her eyes as she listened to the story woven through his lyrics, the struggle, the hope, the unwavering love of a father for his child. Daniel's fingers moved across the strings with practiced grace, even as his voice grew thick with feeling. Lily had stopped crying, her eyes shining with pride as she watched her father sing. The streetlights flickered on, casting a soft glow over their small corner of Nashville. As the last notes faded into the evening air, only a scattered handful of listeners remained. They offered quiet applause, dropping a few dollars into his case before drifting away. The elderly couple smiled warmly as they passed, the woman pausing to pat Lily's shoulder. Daniel set his guitar down gently and pulled Lily close. "You see that, baby? A few people stayed to listen. That's all we need. Just a few hearts to understand." I understand, Daddy, Lily said, wrapping her small arms around his neck. Your songs are the most beautiful in the whole world. He hugged her tighter, pressing a kiss to the top of her head. Someday, someone will understand, he whispered, more to himself than to her. In the deepening shadows across the street, Margaret remained rooted in place. The melody still echoed in her heart, along with the image of this father and daughter holding each other close. She watched as Daniel carefully packed away his guitar, as Lily helped gather their things as they prepared to head home after another long day of sharing their music with an often indifferent world. The morning sun filtered through the thin curtains of Daniel and Lily's small apartment kitchen. Their home wasn't much, just a modest two-bedroom unit with worn carpets and dated wallpaper, but they had made it their own. Crayon drawings decorated the refrigerator, and a collection of Lily's favorite seashells lined the windowsill. Daniel stood at the stove, pushing scrambled eggs around in their only non-stick pan. The toast popped up, slightly darker than he'd intended, but still edible. He scraped the eggs onto two mismatched plates and added the toast. "Breakfast is ready, sweetie," he called out. Lily bounced into the kitchen, her school backpack already on. Her brown hair was pulled into slightly uneven pigtails. She had insisted on doing them herself lately. Smells good, Daddy." Daniel's chest tightened as he set the plates on their small kitchen table. The eggs and toast looked lonely on the large plates. He wished he could give her more, bacon, fresh fruit, or at least some orange juice instead of tap water. But Lily didn't seem to notice any lack. She climbed onto her chair, legs swinging happily as she picked up her fork. "I love our dad and daughter mornings," she said. Scooping up a big bite of eggs, "You make the best scrambled eggs ever." "They're just eggs, honey," Daniel said softly, touching his own fork. "Nuh-uh," Lily protested around a mouthful. "They're special because you make them with love. That's what makes them taste so good." Daniel felt his eyes growing misty. He quickly took a bite of toast to hide his emotion. How did he get so lucky with this child? Her pure heart and endless optimism amazed him daily. Later that morning, they made their way back to their usual spot on Broadway. The street was quieter in the morning hours, with only a few early tourists wandering past. Daniel set up his guitar case while Lily arranged her sign carefully. He had just started warming up with some gentle chords when a well-dressed woman approached them. Daniel recognized her from the previous evening. She had been standing in the shadows, listening. "Excuse me," she said softly, not wanting to draw attention. "I'm Margaret Cole." She extended a sleek business card. "I heard you playing yesterday, and I wondered if you might perform that ballad again, the one about your daughter." Daniel's fingers stilled on the strings. He glanced at the card. Margaret Cole, CEO, Heartland Records. His pulse quickened. "Go ahead, Daddy," Lily encouraged, her eyes bright with excitement. Drawing a deep breath, Daniel began to play. The melody flowed easier this morning, his voice steadier as he sang the words he'd written for Lily. "Little angel with eyes so bright, you give me strength to face the night. Through storms and rain, through doubt and pain, your smile lights up my world again." As he finished the final verse, he noticed Margaret wiping her eyes with a tissue. Several passers-by had stopped to listen, dropping bills into his case. "Mr. Rivers," Margaret said, her voice thick with emotion, "that song, it's extraordinary. The raw honesty. The love in every word, it's exactly what music needs right now." Daniel clutched his guitar, hardly daring to believe what he was hearing. "Please," she continued, "don't give up. Keep writing, keep performing. Music like yours deserves to be heard." She tapped the business card in his hand. "Call my office next week. I'd like to discuss your future." Long after Margaret had disappeared into the crowd, Daniel sat stunned, the business card clutched in his trembling fingers. Hope, fragile but persistent, bloomed in his chest for the first time in years. The day passed in a blur. Daniel played with renewed energy, his voice stronger, his smile genuine. Even the smaller-than-usual tips couldn't dampen his spirit. He had Lily's love and now, possibly, a real chance at his dreams. But that evening, reality crashed back harshly. Daniel had just finished helping Lily with her homework when sharp knocking echoed through their apartment. Opening the door, he found Monica standing there, her expensive perfume filling the hallway. "Daniel," she said coldly, pulling papers from her designer handbag. These need your signature. What are they? He already knew, but asked anyway. Updated divorce papers. Monica thrust them at his chest, including a petition for full custody of Lily. Daniel's stomach dropped. Full custody? But why? Oh, please, Monica cut him off, her voice dripping with disdain. You're clearly unstable, living in this dump, playing guitar on street corners like some homeless person. What kind of life is that for our daughter? I'm providing for her the best I can, Daniel protested, his voice growing hoarse. She's happy, she's doing well in school. Happy? Living on tips and cheap meals? Monica laughed sharply. Face reality, Daniel. You're unfit to raise her. Sign the papers or I'll let the judge decide. And trust me, no court will side with a street musician over a mother with a stable job in a proper home. She turned on her heel, leaving Daniel standing in the doorway, the papers heavy in his hands. Through the open door of her bedroom, he could see Lily at her desk humming as she colored. His heart clenched painfully. The business card in his pocket suddenly felt like it was burning against his leg. The hope it had brought that morning now seemed cruel in the face of this new threat. This wasn't just about his music anymore. It was about keeping his daughter, the light of his life, the reason he got up every morning. Daniel closed the door quietly, not wanting Lily to see the papers or his tears. Daniel sat at their small kitchen table before dawn, turning Margaret Cole's business card over and over in his calloused fingers. The cream-colored card caught the dim light from the lamp, its gold lettering seeming to shimmer. Heartland Records, Margaret Cole, executive producer. His stomach churned with a mixture of hope and doubt. The wooden floor creaked, and he looked up to see Lily padding into the kitchen in her favorite cartoon character pajamas. Her brown hair tousled from sleep. "You're up early, Daddy," she said, rubbing her eyes. "Couldn't sleep, sweetheart." Daniel set the card down and managed a tired smile. "Did I wake you?" Lily shook her head and walked over, picking up the card. Her eyes lit up as she read it. "The lady from yesterday, the one who cried during your song." She looked at him with those earnest brown eyes that always seemed to see right through him. "Daddy, maybe this is God's way of saying your time has come." Daniel's throat tightened. Leave it to his daughter to voice the hope he was too afraid to acknowledge. "I don't know, Lilybug. Sometimes things don't work out the way we want them to. But sometimes they do." Lily pushed the card toward him. "Please call her, Daddy. What's the worst that could happen?" Daniel picked up his phone, his hands trembling slightly. The numbers blurred before his eyes as he dialed. To his surprise, Margaret answered on the second ring. "Margaret Cole speaking." "Ms. Cole, this is Daniel Rivers, from Broadway Street yesterday." "Daniel, I'm so glad you called." Her warm voice instantly put him at ease. "Could you come to my office today? Say, around 11? Daniel glanced at Lily, who was practically bouncing with excitement. "Yes, ma'am, I'll be there." After dropping Lily at school, Daniel stood outside the Heartland Records building, his guitar case heavy in his hand. The modern glass structure seemed to touch the clouds, making him feel smaller than ever in his worn jeans and best plaid shirt. The receptionist directed him to the 12th floor. Margaret's office was smaller than he expected, cozy even, with walls lined with platinum records and vintage concert posters. She greeted him with a genuine smile, gesturing to a comfortable chair. "Thank you for coming, Daniel." Margaret sat across from him, her gray eyes kind but professional. "I haven't been able to get your song out of my head since yesterday. Would you play it for me again?" Daniel's fingers trembled as he pulled out his guitar. The familiar weight of it against his chest steadied him. He closed his eyes and began to play, letting the melody wash over him. The song, written for Lily during their darkest days after the divorce, poured from his heart. "When the world turns cold and gray, I'll be your sunshine every day. Though the path ahead's unclear, my love will always keep you near." When he finished, he opened his eyes to find Margaret dabbing at hers with a tissue. She cleared her throat. "Daniel, people need to hear your heart, that kind of raw honesty. It's rare in this industry." She leaned forward, her expression serious. "I'd like you to record a demo, nothing fancy, just you and your guitar. Would you be willing to do that?" Daniel's heart raced. "Yes, ma'am, I would." They spent the next hour discussing details, and Daniel left with a recording date set for the following week. The afternoon sun felt warmer somehow as he picked up Lily from school. That evening, they sat at their small kitchen table, sharing a simple dinner of macaroni and cheese. Lily sprinkled extra cheese on top, creating what she called her cheese mountain. "Did she like your song, Daddy?" Lily asked, taking a big bite. Daniel nodded, unable to hide his smile. "She did, sweetheart. She wants me to record it." Lily's eyes widened. "Like a real singer?" "Like a real singer." Daniel chuckled as Lily did a little victory dance in her chair. "I knew it," she beamed at him. "I told you God had a plan." Later, as Daniel tucked Lily into bed, her room bathed in the soft glow of her butterfly nightlight, she grabbed his hand. "Are you happy, Daddy?" Daniel kissed her forehead, overwhelmed by love for this precious soul who never stopped believing in him. "Yeah, baby. I am." He smoothed her blanket and whispered, "Maybe tomorrow things will change for us." Lily smiled sleepily, already drifting off. Daniel watched her for a moment, his heart full. The business card sat on his nightstand, no longer just a piece of paper, but a tangible piece of hope. The city bus rattled and swayed as Daniel and Lily made their way downtown. His weathered guitar case rested across both their laps, Lily's small hands wrapped protectively around its worn edges. She'd polished the case that morning with an old t-shirt, determined to make it look its best. "It's still got character," she'd insisted, tracing the scuffs and scratches with her fingers. "Like battle scars, Daddy. It shows how hard you've worked." Now, as the bus lurched to their stop, Daniel's stomach churned with nerves. The Heartland Records building towered above them, its glass windows gleaming in the morning sun. Lily hopped off the bus first, still clutching the guitar case like it held all their dreams inside. "Careful with that, sweetheart," Daniel said, steadying her with a gentle hand on her shoulder. "I've got it, Daddy. I won't let anything happen to it." They walked through the revolving doors into a lobby that took their breath away. The ceiling soared high above them, and a massive crystal chandelier caught the sunlight, scattering rainbow patterns across the marble floor. Modern art pieces decorated the walls, and the receptionist's desk curved like a wave of polished mahogany. Lily's eyes went wide. "It's like a palace," she whispered. Daniel tugged at his collar, suddenly very aware of his second-hand dress shirt and the small coffee stain he hadn't been able to get out. But Lily beamed up at him, and her faith gave him strength. The receptionist looked up as they approached. "Mr. Rivers, Margaret Cole is expecting you, 5th floor, Studio C." The elevator ride felt like floating up to heaven. Lily hummed softly, the melody to his ballad, while Daniel took deep breaths to calm his racing heart. When the doors opened, Margaret was waiting for them. "Daniel, Lily, welcome to Heartland." Her smile was warm and genuine. She wore a simple black blazer and carried herself with quiet confidence. "Are you ready to share your song with us?" Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice just yet. Lily gave him an encouraging squeeze of his hand. Studio C was intimate but professional, with sound-dampening panels on the walls and a small stage area set up with a microphone stand. 4 executives sat in comfortable chairs, their expressions neutral but attentive. Margaret took a seat among them, giving Daniel a subtle nod. "Whenever you're ready," she said softly. Lily carefully handed him the guitar case, then took a seat in the front row. Her presence anchored him, reminded him why he wrote this song in the first place. Daniel's fingers trembled slightly as he tuned his guitar, but when he looked at Lily's encouraging smile, a calm settled over him. He closed his eyes and began to play. The opening notes filled the room, clear and pure. When he started singing, his voice carried all the love and pain of the past years. Every struggle, every moment of doubt, every time Lily's faith had pulled him through. "Through stormy nights and sunny days, I'll hold your hand and guide your ways. Though others say our dreams won't fly, I'll give these wings one more try." His voice cracked with emotion on the chorus, but it only made the performance more powerful. Tears rolled down his cheeks as he sang about midnight lullabies and playground swings, about working extra shifts just to buy school supplies, about the way Lily's smile made everything worthwhile. When the last note faded, the silence in the room was absolute. Daniel opened his eyes to see one of the executives dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Another was scribbling furiously in his notebook, Margaret's face shone with vindication. She'd known all along what they would hear. "Mr. Rivers," the oldest executive said, clearing his throat, "that was extraordinary. The authenticity in your performance, the raw emotion, it's exactly what we've been looking for." "Your songwriting is exceptional," added another. "The way you've captured such universal feelings in such personal details, that's a rare gift." Margaret leaned forward. "I think what my colleagues are trying to say, Daniel, is that we'd very much like to discuss some opportunities with you." Lily could hardly contain herself. She bounced in her seat, beaming with pride. Daniel's hands shook as he carefully placed his guitar back in its case, his mind spinning with possibilities. The rest of the meeting passed in a blur of words like contract and demo recording and potential album. By the time they left the building, the sun was setting, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks. Daddy, can we get burgers, please?" Lily tugged at his sleeve, practically skipping down the sidewalk. "We have to celebrate." Daniel checked his wallet. He'd been saving a little emergency money, but today felt special enough to spend it. "You know what? Yes, we can." They found a small diner a few blocks away, sliding into a red vinyl booth. Daniel ordered them each a burger with all the fixings, plus chocolate milkshakes, a rare treat that made Lily's eyes light up. When their food arrived, Lily dunked a French fry in her shake, something she'd learned from him. "Daddy," she said seriously, though her eyes sparkled, "we're going to make it." Daniel watched his daughter, her face glowing with joy and chocolate shake, and felt something solid and warm settle in his chest. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel dangerous. It felt like coming home. He reached across the table and squeezed her small hand. "You know what, sweetheart? I think you might be right." The morning sun had barely crept through the thin curtains when the thunderous knocking jolted Daniel from his sleep. His heart raced as the pounding continued, each strike against the apartment door more demanding than the last. "Daniel Rivers, open this door right now!" Monica's voice cut through the quiet morning like a knife. Daniel stumbled out of bed, his t-shirt wrinkled from sleep. He glanced anxiously toward Lily's room, hoping the noise hadn't woken her. The wooden floor creaked beneath his feet as he made his way to the door. The moment he turned the lock, Monica burst in, her face flushed with anger. Her designer purse swung wildly from her shoulder as she jabbed a finger at his chest. "How dare you?" she hissed, waving her phone in his face. "I had to hear about your little audition from Karen at the salon. You're dragging our daughter into this ridiculous fantasy of yours?" Daniel stepped back, keeping his voice low. "Monica, please. Lily's still sleeping." "Oh, now you care about her well-being?" Monica's laugh was sharp and bitter. "While you're chasing pipe dreams, I'm trying to give her stability. You're nothing but a delusional street performer." The words stung, but Daniel held his ground. "I have a real chance here, Monica. Margaret Cole believes in my music." "Margaret Cole?" Monica scoffed. "The whole town will know about this by noon. A middle-aged man playing guitar on street corners, pretending he's going to be the next big thing. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" Before Daniel could respond, a small voice came from the hallway. "Stop being mean to Daddy." Lily stood there in her pajamas, her eyes wide and hurt. Daniel's heart ached at the sight of her distress. "Sweetheart, go back to bed," he said gently. Monica's expression shifted to a calculated smile. "Oh, honey, I'm just trying to protect you. Your father needs to understand that this isn't healthy." The next few hours passed in a blur. Monica stormed out with threats echoing behind her, and Daniel tried his best to comfort Lily over bowls of cereal she barely touched. But by afternoon, his world began to crumble. First came the legal notice, Monica's emergency petition for full custody. The papers painted him as unstable, unfit, a father who chose selfish dreams over his daughter's security. Daniel's hands shook as he read the accusations. Then his phone buzzed with text messages from friends. "Have you seen it?" they asked. "The article?" There it was, splashed across a local entertainment website. Nashville's delusional dad, street performer's desperate grab for fame. The story was cruel, filled with quotes from anonymous sources describing him as a failed musician refusing to grow up. Someone had even snapped photos of him and Lily on their street corner, the images carefully chosen to look as pathetic as possible. When his phone rang again, Daniel's heart lifted slightly at Margaret's name on the screen, but her voice was heavy with regret. "Daniel, I'm so sorry," she said. "The label, they're concerned about the publicity. We need to put things on hold until this settles down." He wanted to argue, to remind her of how she'd felt when she first heard his music, but the words wouldn't come. After hanging up, he sat at the kitchen table, staring at nothing while Lily worked on her homework nearby, shooting worried glances his way. The sky outside darkened to deep purple, then black. Lily should have been in bed hours ago, but neither of them wanted to be alone. Daniel sat in the worn armchair by the window, his guitar resting silent in his lap. His fingers hovered over the strings but couldn't find the strength to make them sing. The soft padding of bare feet drew his attention. Lily appeared beside him, her face serious in the dim light from the street lamp outside. Without a word, she climbed into his lap, careful not to bump the guitar. "Daddy?" she whispered, leaning her head against his chest. "Yeah, baby?" "Remember what Pastor Mike said last Sunday about how God doesn't bring us to something just to leave us there?" Daniel's throat tightened. Even now, his daughter's faith shone brighter than his own. "Don't give up, Daddy," Lily continued, her small hand finding his. "God didn't bring us this far to leave us." Daniel wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. The guitar slid to the side, forgotten for the moment. His eyes burned with unshed tears as he held his daughter, caught between the crushing weight of despair and the tiny flame of faith that flickered in his heart. They sat there in the darkness, father and daughter, while the city hummed outside their window. Daniel's mind warred between two truths, the seeming impossibility of his situation and the unwavering trust in his daughter's eyes when she looked at him. He hugged her tighter, feeling the weight of both his dreams and his fears pressing down on his shoulders. The marble halls of the courthouse echoed with footsteps and hushed whispers as Daniel Rivers adjusted his worn navy suit jacket. The fabric felt tight across his shoulders. He hadn't worn it since his divorce 3 years ago. Beside him, Lily's small hand gripped his tightly, her blue dress matching the ribbon in her hair. "It's going to be okay, Daddy," Lily whispered, though her voice quivered. Daniel squeezed her hand gently, trying to hide his own trembling. The wooden benches creaked as they made their way to their seats. Across the aisle, Monica sat perfectly poised in an expensive gray business suit, her lips pressed into a thin line. Her attorney, a sharp-featured man in a pristine suit, shuffled papers importantly. The bailiff's voice rang out. "All rise. The Honorable Judge Harrison presiding." Judge Harrison entered, his silver hair and kind eyes scanning the courtroom as everyone stood. Daniel's legs felt weak as he rose, but Lily's steady presence anchored him. "Please be seated," the judge said. "We're here today regarding the custody modification petition for Lily Rivers." Monica's lawyer stood first, his polished shoes clicking against the floor. "Your Honor, we intend to prove that Mr. B. Rivers is financially unstable and engaging in irresponsible behavior unbecoming of a primary custodial parent." For the next hour, Daniel endured as Monica's attorney painted him as a failure. Pictures of him performing on street corners were presented as evidence of his unstable lifestyle. His modest apartment was described as barely adequate. His dreams of music were mocked as childish fantasies. "Mr. Rivers earned less than $15,000 last year," the lawyer declared. "Meanwhile, my client can provide Lily with private school education, extracurricular activities, and a stable environment." Daniel's own attorney, a kind woman working at reduced rates, did her best to defend him. She presented his perfect attendance at parent-teacher conferences, Lily's excellent grades, and testimonials from neighbors about his devotion as a father. But when it was Daniel's turn to speak, he struggled to find the words. His voice cracked as he tried to explain his love for his daughter, how music wasn't just a dream, but a way to show her that faith and perseverance matter. "Your Honor," Daniel finally said, his voice barely above a whisper, "if I may, I'd like to show you something." His hands shaking, he reached for his guitar case. Monica's lawyer jumped up. "Objection! This is highly irregular." "I'll allow it," Judge Harrison said quietly, leaning forward with interest. "Proceed, Mr. Rivers." Daniel pulled out his old guitar, the wood worn smooth from years of use. Lily's eyes shone with pride as he positioned his fingers on the frets. "I wrote this song the night Lily was born," Daniel said softly. I've sung it to her every birthday since. The first notes filled the courtroom, clear and pure. Daniel's voice, trembling at first, grew stronger with each word. Little angel in my arm, heaven's gift to me, through the storms and through the dark, your light helps me see. I may not have silver or gold, but love makes us rich indeed, and though the world feels mighty cold, you're all the warmth I need. As he sang, tears rolled down his cheeks, but his voice never wavered. The courthouse staff had stopped their work, standing in doorways to listen. The court reporter wiped her eyes. Even Monica's stern expression cracked, a single tear trailing down her cheek as she looked at their daughter. Lily mouthed the words along with her father, her small face glowing with love and pride. Judge Harrison sat completely still, his hands folded, watching intently as Daniel finished the last verse. So rest your head and dream away. No, Daddy's always here. No matter what the world may say, you're my treasure, dear. The last note faded into silence. For a moment, no one moved or spoke. Then Judge Harrison cleared his throat, clearly affected by the performance. In my 30 years on the bench, he began, his voice thick with emotion, I've heard countless arguments about financial stability and material provisions, but today I witnessed something rare, pure, unconditional love expressed in its truest form. He paused, looking directly at Daniel. Mr. Rivers, while your financial situation may not be ideal, it's clear that you provide something far more valuable, a father's devoted heart and unwavering presence in your daughter's life. Daniel held his breath as the judge continued. This court finds that the best interests of the child are served by maintaining primary custody with the father, Daniel Rivers. The current visitation schedule with Mrs. Rivers will remain unchanged. Relief flooded through Daniel's body. His legs gave way as he collapsed back into his seat, pulling Lily into his arms. She wrapped her small arms around his neck, her tears dampening his collar. We did it, baby girl, he whispered, his voice breaking with emotion. We did it. Lily held him tighter, and in that moment, nothing else mattered. Not the struggle, not the uncertainty, just the precious gift of keeping his daughter close. The morning sun cast long shadows across the courthouse steps as Daniel and Lily emerged, still processing their victory from the hearing. Their quiet moment of triumph was interrupted by an unexpected crowd gathered outside, not protesters or critics, but people holding up phones, some wiping tears from their eyes. Mr. Rivers, called out a young woman with a press badge, your song has gone viral overnight. Daniel blinked in confusion, instinctively pulling Lily closer. A teenage boy stepped forward, holding up his phone. Someone recorded you singing in the courtroom yesterday. It's everywhere. Millions of views already. Looking down at his daughter, Daniel saw her eyes light up. See, Daddy? Now everyone knows how special your music is. The crowd pressed closer, but remained respectful, many sharing words of encouragement. Your song made me call my own daughter, said an elderly man, his voice thick with emotion. Thank you for reminding me what matters. A mother with tears in her eyes squeezed Daniel's hand as they passed. That song, it's exactly how I feel about my children. You put it into words perfectly. Back at their apartment complex, neighbors who had never spoken to them before stopped to offer congratulations. Mrs. Martinez from down the hall hugged them both, saying she'd seen the video shared by her grandchildren in California. The apartment manager, usually stern about late rent, smiled warmly and said, We're proud of you, Mr. Rivers. Daniel's phone wouldn't stop buzzing with notifications. Social media messages, comments, and shares poured in faster than he could process. Local news stations requested interviews. Music blogs analyzed the raw emotion in his performance. But most touching were the thousands of comments from parents and children, sharing how his song had moved them to tears and helped heal their own relationships. By early afternoon, a familiar face appeared at their door, Margaret Cole, practically bouncing with excitement. Her usual composed demeanor had given way to genuine joy as she burst into their small living room. Daniel, the world is listening now, she exclaimed, pulling out her tablet to show them the statistics. Your courtroom performance has resonated with people in ways we couldn't have imagined. It's authentic, it's raw, it's exactly what people are craving in music right now. Lily perched on the arm of their worn sofa, beaming as Margaret scrolled through the coverage. The label executives who were hesitant before, they've been calling nonstop. Everyone wants to be part of your story now. Daniel sat heavily in his old recliner, overwhelmed. His phone buzzed again, another interview request, this time from a major morning show. "I don't understand," he said softly. "I was just trying to keep my daughter. I wasn't performing. I was just being honest." "That's exactly why it worked," Margaret replied, her eyes soft with understanding. People are tired of manufactured music. They want truth. They want heart. And yesterday, you gave them both. Lily wrapped her arms around her father's neck. "I always knew your songs were special, Daddy. Now everyone else knows too." Throughout the afternoon, Margaret helped them navigate the sudden flood of attention. She screened calls, organized interviews, and began preliminary contract discussions with the label. Daniel's simple song about a father's love for his daughter had struck a chord that resonated far beyond that courtroom. "We'll need to move carefully," Margaret advised, her business sense returning. "This isn't just about making music anymore. You've become a symbol of hope for people, parents fighting for their children, dreamers who won't give up, anyone who's ever felt defeated but kept going." Daniel looked around their small apartment, at the water stain on the ceiling, the secondhand furniture, the tiny kitchen where he and Lily had shared so many simple meals. "I just want to keep making honest music," he said, "and take care of my little girl." "That's why this is working," Margaret smiled. "Keep that perspective. It's your superpower." As evening fell, after Margaret left with promises to return tomorrow, Daniel and Lily followed their nightly routine. They heated up leftover casserole from Mrs. Martinez, shared stories about their incredible day, and got ready for bed. But tonight felt different, filled with possibility rather than worry. In Lily's small bedroom, with its walls covered in her drawings and the glow-in-the-dark stars they'd put up together, father and daughter knelt beside her bed. The same way they had every night, through all the hard times, through every rejection and setback. Daniel's voice was thick with emotion as he bowed his head. "Thank you for giving us this second chance," he whispered, feeling Lily's small hand in his. Tears rolled down his cheeks as gratitude overwhelmed him, not just for the sudden success, but for every moment that had led here, for the strength to keep going when giving up seemed easier, for his daughter's unwavering faith, for the chance to show her that dreams, no matter how impossible they seem, are worth fighting for. Daniel's hand trembled as he reached for the gleaming glass door of Heartland Recording Studios. The polished brass handle felt cool against his palm, so different from his worn guitar strings. Lily bounced beside him, her pink backpack filled with snacks and her favorite books for what promised to be a long day. The receptionist smiled warmly, directing them down a hallway lined with gold and platinum records. Lily's sneakers squeaked against the pristine floor as she pointed at each plaque, reading the names in whispered awe. Daniel's weathered boots seemed out of place on the expensive carpeting, but Margaret had insisted this studio was perfect for his first professional recording. When they entered the main studio, Lily gasped, "Daddy, look at all the buttons!" The control room sparkled with equipment, walls of knobs, switches, and glowing screens that made their small TV at home look like a toy. Through the window, the recording booth waited, a single microphone standing in a pool of soft light. The studio engineer, Tom, a man with kind eyes and graying temples, gave them a tour. He explained each piece of equipment in simple terms, especially for Lily's benefit. "This board," he said, pointing to the massive mixing console, "is like painting with sound. We use it to make your daddy's voice and guitar shine just right." Margaret arrived as Daniel was tuning his guitar, her presence bringing a sense of calm to his nervous energy. "Ready to make some magic?" she asked, squeezing his shoulder. "I don't know about magic," Daniel replied, adjusting a string. "Just trying to tell the truth through music, like always." The producer, James Wilson, walked in carrying coffee for everyone, and a hot chocolate for Lily. His casual demeanor helped ease Daniel's tension. "That's exactly what we want," James said. "No fancy production tricks, just you, your guitar, and your story." As Daniel stepped into the booth, Lily pressed her face against the control room window, giving him 2 thumbs up. The headphones felt foreign on his ears, but the weight of his guitar against his chest was familiar, a faithful friend that had seen him through countless street performances. "Whenever you're ready," James's voice came through the headphones. just like you're playing for Lily. Daniel closed his eyes, picturing all those mornings on Broadway Street, the indifferent crowds, the empty guitar case, the hope in Lily's eyes that never dimmed. His fingers found the opening chords of the ballad, the song that had changed everything in that courtroom. The first take was good, but James encouraged him to dig deeper. "Remember why you wrote this?" he suggested. "Let us feel it." On the third take, something shifted. Daniel's voice carried every sleepless night, every skipped meal so Lily could eat, every moment of doubt and determination. When he sang about watching his daughter sleep, about promising her the stars despite having empty pockets, his voice cracked with raw emotion. Through the window, he saw Margaret wiping her eyes. Tom, the engineer who had recorded thousands of songs, sat motionless, his hand frozen above the console. Lily's face shone with pride and love. "That's the one," James said softly when the last note faded. "You're not just a singer, Daniel. You're a storyteller. That's rare these days." They recorded a few more takes, but everyone knew they'd captured lightning in that third version. During playback, Daniel sat with Lily in his lap, both of them listening to his voice fill the professional speakers. It sounded polished, but not perfect, clear, but not artificial, exactly like him, just somehow more. "Can we add anything?" Tom asked, hands hovering over the mixing board. "Some strings, maybe? Or light percussion?" Daniel looked at Margaret, who shook her head. "It's perfect as it is," she said. "Sometimes less is more." Hours passed as they worked on other songs for the album. Lily did her homework in the corner, occasionally sharing her snacks with the studio staff. She never complained about the long day, understanding that something special was happening. Between takes, Daniel watched his daughter. She had grown up with so little, yet somehow remained so full of joy and faith. Every word he sang was for her. Not just the lyrics, but the hope and love behind them. As the evening session wound down, James played back the final mix of the ballad. The simple arrangement let Daniel's voice and guitar carry the emotion, with just enough studio magic to make it radio-ready without losing its heart. "This is going to touch people," Margaret said quietly, "just like it did in that courtroom." When they finally stepped outside, the Nashville night had painted the sky in deep purple and scattered stars. The air was warm and sweet with magnolia blossoms. Daniel held Lily's hand as they walked to their car, both tired but happy. Looking up at the stars that seemed brighter somehow, Daniel whispered, "This is just the beginning." Lily squeezed his hand and replied, "It's the beginning of our song, Daddy." The spotlights cast a warm glow across the Ryman Auditorium's historic stage. Daniel Rivers stood at the microphone, his once battered guitar now gleaming under the lights. His weathered hands, which had endured countless hours of street performing, gripped the instrument with quiet confidence. In the front row, 10-year-old Lily sat with Margaret Cole, both wearing matching proud smiles. Daniel's voice, clear and strong, filled the packed auditorium. "This song," he said, his words soft but steady, "is called My Little Light. I wrote it for my daughter during our darkest days." The familiar opening chords rang out. But this time they weren't competing with traffic noise or harsh weather. Instead, they soared through the perfect acoustics of Nashville's mother church of country music. Daniel closed his eyes, remembering all those days on the street corner, Lily's cardboard sign propped against their tip jar. "When the world turns cold and gray, your smile lights up my darkest day. Though times are hard and the road is long, your love gives me strength to carry on." In the audience, several people dabbed at their eyes. Lily beamed up at her father, mouthing the words she knew by heart. The verses flowed one into another, telling their story of struggle and hope, of a father's love and a daughter's unwavering faith. As Daniel reached the bridge, his voice cracked with emotion, but he didn't falter. The raw honesty in his performance touched something deep in every heart present. Even the most hardened music critics in attendance found themselves moved by the authenticity of his delivery. "And when I thought all hope was gone, you showed me how to carry on. My little light in darkness bright, my angel's love sets everything right." The final note hung in the air for a precious moment before the audience erupted. People rose to their feet, applause thundering through the historic venue. Tears streamed down faces throughout the crowd. Daniel looked down at Lily, who was clapping harder than anyone, her face glowing with joy and pride. Margaret gestured for Lily to join her father on stage. The little girl ran up the steps, her patent leather shoes clicking against the wood. Daniel knelt down and wrapped her in a tight embrace as the applause continued. Reporters crowded the edge of the stage, cameras flashing. One held out a microphone. "Mr. Rivers, how does it feel to go from street performer to Nashville's newest sensation?" Daniel kept one arm around Lily as he answered, "Honestly, I'm overwhelmed with gratitude, not just for this moment, but for every hard day that led here." He looked heavenward. God had a plan all along, even when I couldn't see it. And this little girl, he squeezed Lily's shoulders, she never stopped believing, even when I did. Another reporter called out, "What would you say to other struggling artists out there?" Daniel's eyes grew thoughtful. "Don't let anyone shame you for having a dream. Some people will try to tear you down, call you a failure." He paused, remembering the heckling and humiliation. But if God puts a song in your heart, He has a reason. Sometimes the darkest moments come right before the breakthrough. Lily tugged at his sleeve and whispered something in his ear. Daniel smiled and nodded. "My daughter wants to add something," he said, lifting her up to the microphone. "Never give up," Lily said simply, her voice clear and strong, "because God doesn't give up on us." The crowd erupted in fresh applause. Margaret made her way to the stage, pride evident in her expression. She had believed in Daniel's talent from that first moment on the street, and now the world was discovering what she had known all along. Later that week, Daniel and Lily stood in the familiar warmth of the recording studio. This time, though, they weren't just visiting, they were creating something special together. Two microphones stood side by side, one lowered to Lily's height. "Ready, sweetheart?" Daniel adjusted her headphones. Lily nodded, excitement dancing in her eyes. "Ready, Daddy." The producer gave them a thumbs up from behind the glass. The music began to play. And father and daughter leaned into their microphones. Their voices blended perfectly on the final chorus of "My Little Light," Lily's sweet, clear tone weaving through her father's emotional depth. "Through storms and rain, we'll find our way. Your love brings sunshine to each day. With faith and hope, we'll carry on, together singing our forever song." As their voices faded away, Daniel looked at his daughter through tears of joy. It wasn't just a song. It was a testimony of love, faith, and the belief that dreams, no matter how battered, can be reborn. The autumn breeze danced through Nashville's Broadway street, carrying the scent of coffee and the distant twang of guitars from honky-tonks. Daniel Rivers stood at the familiar corner where his journey had begun, his polished Martin guitar catching the morning sunlight. Next to him, Lily clutched a bouquet of yellow daisies and white roses, her Sunday dress swaying in the wind. This corner held so many memories, some bitter, most sweet. The concrete still bore the scuff marks where his guitar case had rested day after day. The lamppost where Lily had propped her cardboard sign still stood sentinel. But everything else had changed. "Look, isn't that Daniel Rivers?" A young woman nudged her friend, phone already in hand. "The one from that courthouse video? The dad who sang for his daughter?" Another passerby slowed down, recognition dawning on his face. Daniel smiled warmly at them, no longer the desperate street performer seeking validation. His eyes met Lily's, finding the same quiet strength that had carried them through their darkest days. She nodded, understanding passing between them without words. Opening his guitar case, the same one that once collected spare change but now lined with velvet, Daniel pulled out his instrument. The morning sun caught the mother-of-pearl inlays, so different from the scratched finish of months past. "This corner," he said softly to Lily, "was where God started writing our story." A small crowd began to gather, phones raised to capture the moment. Margaret Cole stood near the coffee shop entrance, her usual elegant suit replaced by casual weekend wear. She watched with quiet pride, remembering that rainy evening when she'd first heard Daniel's raw, honest voice cutting through the city noise. Daniel's fingers found the familiar chords of "My Little Light." The melody, now known to millions through social media and radio, floated down Broadway Street. But this time, it wasn't a plea for attention or spare change. It was a thanksgiving, a testament to faith rewarded. Lily's clear voice joined his on the chorus, their harmony drawing more onlookers. Tourist buses slowed, passengers craning their necks to watch. Street vendors paused their sales pitches. Even the normally hurried locals stopped to listen. "That's them," someone whispered. "The father and daughter from the viral video." Through the growing crowd, Daniel spotted a familiar face. Monica stood at the edge of the gathering, her designer purse clutched tightly. But today, her usual sharp expression was absent. She watched them with something different in her eyes, perhaps regret, perhaps understanding. When she caught Daniel's gaze, she didn't turn away with a sneer. Instead, she lowered her eyes, something shifting in her rigid posture. The song continued, father and daughter singing their story to the street that had witnessed their struggle. Some in the audience wiped tears, others swayed gently. A few remembered mocking this same man months ago, their jeers now replaced by respectful silence. Margaret stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on Lily's shoulder. The little girl beamed up at her, never missing a note. The record executive, who had seen past Daniel's worn clothes and desperate circumstances, now stood as family, part of their journey of redemption. The final notes faded into the morning air. Applause erupted, genuine and warm, so different from the pitying claps of before. Lily stepped forward, carefully laying her bouquet at the base of the lamppost. The flowers seemed to glow in the sunlight, a bright reminder of hope fulfilled. Daniel watched as tourists dropped bills into his case despite his protests. "Please," he said, "give it to another street performer who needs it more. This corner is where dreams can come true." Through the dispersing crowd, Monica took a hesitant step forward. For a moment she stood awkwardly, the sharp words that once came so easily now stuck in her throat. Lily, showing wisdom beyond her years, smiled at her mother. The gesture seemed to break something in Monica's carefully maintained facade. "The song," she said softly. "It's beautiful." Then she turned and walked away, her heels clicking on the pavement, but the bitterness that once followed her was gone. As the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows down Broadway, Daniel began packing up his guitar. The corner was quieter now, returning to its usual rhythm of tourists and locals. He ran his hand along the lamppost one last time, remembering all the prayers whispered here, all the tears shed, all the hope desperately clung to. Lily touched his arm gently. "Daddy, this is our song now." Daniel looked down at his daughter, tears welling in his eyes. In her face, he saw every moment of faith she'd shown when he'd doubted, every smile she'd given when he'd wanted to quit. He nodded, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Hand in hand, they walked away from the corner. They were no longer the broken father and child scraping for hope, but a family reborn through faith, love, and music. The streets that once mocked him became the streets that witnessed his triumph. And in every note, he carried the unshakable truth. Love always finds its voice. A single father, mocked on the streets of Nashville, poured every ounce of love into his music. And in the end, the world listened. From the sidewalks of despair to the lights of the stage, Daniel Rivers found redemption, not just in fame, but in the bond with his daughter that no ridicule could ever break. But as the applause fades and the spotlight brightens, one question remains. Was this the end of their journey, or just the beginning of an even greater test? Click the next video to find out what happens next, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories like this, and tell us in the comments, what do you think lies ahead for Daniel and Lily? Thank you for spending these moments with us. Your time and presence here truly matter. Stories like Daniel and Lily's remind us that no matter how broken life feels, love and faith can carry us through. I'd love to hear from you. Where are you watching from, and what did this story mean to you personally? Please share your reflections in the comments below. If you believe in stories of resilience, hope, and second chances, I invite you to subscribe and join our community. Together, we can keep sharing stories that lift hearts and remind us of what's possible. Until next time, know this: you are seen, you are valued, and your story matters. Stay inspired, and I'll see you in the next one.